Happy Thursday, the trustees of Conrad, Davies, and Pearce, which according to Zach Brown on Twitter sounds like a law firm. And who is to say that it's not? Anyway, we're talking Gold Cup soccer, big transfers, and some other stuff. So hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it, everybody. Yes. What is up, everyone? And welcome to Nate Jaqua's favorite podcast in soccer we trust. I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese, Conradinho Conrad, also known as Jim, alongside Hollywood Heartbreak Kid Heath Pearce, and not Charlie Chuckwagon Davies, because he's a no-show. And like always, we have a great show for you today because we're previewing the USMNT national team's last game of their group against Trinidad. We're looking at the Gold Cup overall, and we have some big USMNT national team transfers to discuss. So this is going to be fun, but first and foremost, Heath, how was holding it down by yourself last night? Did our board of trustees, our new potential nickname for our amazing community, did they treat you okay?
They did. Yeah, I think it's always a hard one to recap in general when you have those types of blowout games because there's just it's the world's biggest gap, Jimmy, for like landing on either side of the extreme argument, right? Which is like, oh yeah, of course, like, you know, let's see Ferreira do it against somebody good, and then on the flip side, it's kind of like, well, Greg would have put out a double pivot defensively in this one against St. Kitts and Nevis. It's like it's grounds for let's say arguments that don't have a foundation, and it's hard to like argue a point. But everybody was pretty vibey in there. I thought it was a pretty good, quick little run last night.
Okay, well, I'm glad you did that, and shout out to everybody that joined you. And for those that didn't, I haven't had my 2 cents on this particular game. 6-0 in favor of the U.S. I think that's a result that we should put out against a team of the size and quality of St. Kitts. I think it should have been more. There was a great quote from Brian Reynolds, who's actually, I love this mentality. He said this after the game. I think it was important that we got a goal early and a lot of goals early. But with our quality, I think we could have scored 10 goals. He scored his first for his career. Good for him, and it was a good one. Well taken.
On his birthday.
He also said, yeah, happy birthday to him. It's good that we won, but we always want to see things that we can improve upon. And I like that last line a lot because it shows a growth mindset. And they should, obviously, we should be trying to stomp on teams and take care of business. I will say, we've talked about this ad nauseum in the past, but when you play these teams, you could also put out a performance that if you can't play well against St. Kitts, how are we going to trust you against the big teams, the Mexicos in our region or any other of the big countries around the world? And there seemed to be, and from when I got to watch the game a little bit later, Zendejas, I thought, was trying a little bit too hard, obviously doing the work, and it's not an energy thing. It's just more of a little bit of a quality thing. Cade Cal maybe didn't have his best performance. But overall, I thought everybody was pretty solid and did the job that we expected them to do. And I'm sure you mentioned this because you said it in the preview. We needed a professional performance, and we got a professional performance. And now we have a nice little cushion to try to win the group. Jamaica, I actually thought they looked fantastic against Trinidad. They did give up a goal. They won 4-1. We can talk about them. Maybe you did last night. But Bart Gray is so good. That guy is so good. Yeah. And I think that he is a piece of that puzzle that they needed to fit in a little bit more. And as you can see here with the standings, if you're watching on the YouTubes, we're tied on points with Jamaica. Jamaica's going to have a shot at the St. Kitts team. They could put 10 up against these guys. And if we end up beating Trinidad, like I expect us to, because the last 2 times that we've played them, after getting knocked out by the World Cup qualifying in 2017, we've outscored them 13-0. So I fully expect us to get the results, but that goal difference could get a little tricky. So, because they have a lot of gaps in their team and their team shape. So I don't expect Trinidad to cause us too many problems. We can get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I thought Jamaica was excellent. If they go on to win the group, then obviously it gets a little trickier for us in our path to the final.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, having said that, Jimmy, we played Mexico in a semifinal of the Nations League, right? Obviously a completely different team, and it was less than ideal because you want that to be the big, the big final. But at the same time, Mexico and potentially this U.S. team maybe aren't a finalist, right? In terms of like out and out favorites. Like maybe the final right now in CONCACAF shouldn't be U.S. versus Mexico. Obviously, it should be the U.S. based on the results we've had in tournaments. But could that be Canada? Could that be Jamaica? I think that's a different conversation right now. And by the way, Jamaica, they pressed so high up. Like if I'm the U.S. right now and I'm thinking about how do we play against Trinidad and I said this last night on the pod, Jimmy, if you remember, like Japan and Saudi Arabia, where we just decided we're going to just keep on trying to do the same thing that's not working over and over again, instead of saying, well, we can get back to this in 5 minutes, but let's at least earn the space on the field and maybe lump a few long, or maybe get into the channels or stretch these teams a little bit so that we can earn the space underneath to try to play through. When I watched Trinidad, they were doing the same thing. They were convinced that they were going to play through everything every single time. And Jamaica said from the very start, we're going to press with 6 or 7. We're going to collapse on them. And then every time we lose the ball, we're going to press immediately as well. Just the two parts of the modern game that I think are really interesting. And they did it so well that it really put them under pressure. If I'm the U.S. and I'm looking to get that early goal, which we've obviously seen in Nations League and Gold Cup and any other time that we want to give ourselves a nice little break, that early goal is so unbelievably important. So I'd be looking at it like that, of putting your players on the field, that if I'm BJ Callahan, putting your players on the field that are willing to do the work in transitional moments as well in high pressing moments to just create that chaos, because Trinidad didn't accept what the game gave them and they fell apart trying to stick to that same game plan of playing through, and Jamaica picked it off over and over again until it was pretty much you could sort of predict how every play was going to play out. By the way, Jimmy, are you getting a join the chat thing on your, I guess we can log into YouTube now in the comments and join the chat live on the show, and we can participate in the chat. I don't know if Chuck's going to do it.
Chuck will definitely do it.
Yeah.
Cause he's going to, while you and I are going on these long soliloquies, he's going to get in there as he does. I'm actually sad that Chuck isn't here because he can't get triggered. And now it falls to either you and I and the trustees to try to see if they can trip us up a little bit. Now, throwing it back to the U.S., now that we have 2 games under our belt, I'm kind of curious where the conversation goes, because I was a bit surprised that BJ didn't go. I know he listens to the podcast. I know he has to.
He does it twice a day. He
goes
wakes
over
up
twice.
to it, and then later on in the day, he, in a different mood, when he's had his coffee, the coffee that him and I usually share together, he looks at it from a different perspective. After taking some consultation from the team, he goes, "Guys, I want you to give a listen and give me some feedback of the podcast. Should we do this or not?"
He wants our validation. That's exactly what he wants.
BJ, we accept you. Stop listening to the podcast, man. Okay, you're great.
Well, no, actually, I think we give him good information and things to consider. I feel like at this point we're an extension of the coaching staff. So keeping that in mind, I was a little disappointed not to see Ferreira and Vasquez starting this game. Ultimately, he was pretty close to the starting lineup that we came with, so I was excited about that. But I think that needs to, or at least I'd like to see it get tried against Trinidad. The only issue is with Ferreira scoring a hat trick, and fair play to him. I think he's the youngest or the first player or the fastest player to ever hit double digits in goals. I think he 11 goals in 20 games right now. And I know that, yes, there's going to be a lot of Ferreira haters about the opponents that he scored against, but you can only play the team that's in front of you. Yeah. And yes, we'd love to have him.
Let's acknowledge, let's definitely acknowledge though, Jimmy, that it's 4 against Granada and 3 against St. Kitts and Nevis.
That's true. Fair. We have to.
But I said it last night, it is hard to score, right? And who was it that Chris, not Chris Richards, but Brian Reynolds made the comment about, we could have put up 10. You and I both know. I played in one that's still the record today, or tied for the record of 8-0 against Barbados. And
how do you feel about yourself, Heath? How do you feel about yourself?
Well, my whole point is we could have scored 20, right? And you get that. And some of my criticisms of players last night were about this idea that you think you're going to get 20. So there was a lack of, even from Mihailovic, I thought had a good game, but there was a lack of sharpness and killer instinct. One time he got in behind the back line and could have just scored easily, and he went for a little clip that went wide. It was too casual, right? Because that it's that idea where you're okay, it's going to be a nice, smooth game. We got the early goals, we're pulling them apart. But for me to see a player go from this squad to the A team, I want that locked in, dialed in, eye on the bullseye, ruthlessness in situations like that you get a chance, you get a goal, you get a chance, you get a goal.
Right.
Not this whole it's not that big of a deal, we'll get another one type of thing. And I felt that at times there was a lack of that from Zendejas, from Cowell, from Mihailovic, that we could have scored even more. And that was a lack of focus versus a lack of just finishing chances.
Okay, so let's talk about what would you do against Trinidad then? I mean, one thing that we learned for sure is we can't play a double pivot. Just can't happen. We're just not as good of a team. It I used to have this criticism of Bob Bradley, even when I was being coached by him. I was on the team, and in games that I didn't start, and I probably have shared this story before, but I would go in at halftime because I wanted to hear what he was saying to the group and how any kind of tactical changes he was making from what he said at the beginning and what he was in halftime. I was learning. I'm a student of the game, right? We already know I'm a soccer nerd. We got that.
You said you would go in at halftime.
I'd go. You know how when you don't play, you kind of just go out and just dick around at halftime on the field, and because like there's nothing he's saying that doesn't matter.
Chase the sprinklers.
Yeah, chase the sprinklers around. Waving to the crowd. Getting your couple minutes in.
Do your tricks near the sideline so you get a couple oohs and ahs to build your confidence.
Yeah, exactly.
For not starting.
I didn't have any tricks in my bag, but I had a big smile for anybody that was heckling me with some choice words, but. I would always go in, and more often than not, as I aged, I would see something that happened in the game, and I would go talk to that particular player. Hey, they're overloading this side. You might not want to commit into this space. I just give them little nuggets of information, almost like an assistant coach. And I prided myself on that. It kept me engaged, right? I felt more of a participant in what was happening instead of feeling sorry for myself that I wasn't playing or whatever. So that helped me. But I remember thinking when Bob would talk to us before a game, he would, remember they called it the empty bucket, right? Mm-hmm. And we would play with kind of two high. We'd play a 4-4-2. We'd have the outside midfielders would play high, and then we'd have kind of a flat two in front of the back four, the two center backs. And it worked a lot, but it always felt like we were set up to that the other team
counteract the other team.
Yeah, the other team was always better than us.
Yeah.
And I hated that. Because I always appreciated that about Bruce Arena, and you can still see it in the teams he coaches now with the New England Revolution. He gives you that sense of confidence, like we're better than that other team. We can play with anybody. We're good enough to play with anybody, and I love that about Bruce and how he instilled that into the team overall, collectively and individually. But with Bob, and I appreciated Bob's pragmatism. I think there's a lot of that, and I'm still bummed for him for getting fired at Toronto. He's done a lot for the game in this country, and so for it to end that way, nobody gets to happy ending. We already talked about that. Yeah. But I just felt like, and now when we go into a double six, I'll bring it back to what I'm talking about now. When we play a double six, a double pivot in front of it just feels the same way, that we're almost giving too much respect to the other team, and that's what I like BJ for the Nations League. He's like, you know what? We're going to put Gio centrally. We are going to attack these guys. We are going to bring in a normal six to play for Tyler Adams. We are going to have Musa and McKinney, and we're just going to roll with it and see what happens. And the guys responded. And then it's hard to really take too much from the St. Kitts game because we're so lopsided in terms of quality and talents and all that. And it was just a matter of time since we got that first goal for St. Kitts to really pressure us. But against Trinidad, I think we're going to be challenged a little bit more. I don't think we're going to see a double pivot, but I don't want to see it ever again. I just don't think we're built that way. And I think our guys want to have freedom to play and not have handcuffs on that. I think the double six puts on us. It puts on us.
I do think that there are opponents that are greater than us and better than us that we should probably have the variable in place to be able to shift to that. If we're struggling, right? Or if you're playing,
give me a flexible 8 that goes box to box that has a little discipline.
This is actually
This
is actually really why I really liked, I was critical of Busio being a starter in that one, because I just thought, again, I would have liked to have seen Ferreira there with Mihailovic, with Vasquez up top. But Busio's timing off of Ferreira's runs were unbelievable, right? And that's what led to the early goals. Just his understanding of time and space and rhythm, I liked that. Now he's at 8, right? He's not like we're not talking about like a double 10. You do need an 8, but I also feel like Mihailovic is not a 10. So they're kind of like double 8s. And his timing of being able to get the ball underneath is one thing, but his ability to get the ball in behind the back line and stretch the team, the opponent once in a while, I think is so important. When you have those players in there. Otherwise, you're just clogging space and denying entry balls into your striker, right? But his ability to, when Ferreira was coming off the front line, to then occupy that space, to go into that, one, he got the ball into good spots because it forced those defenders to make decisions. They make the wrong one. You go with the player that's open, those overloads. But it also just created that early connectivity with the striker and the midfield line that I think we struggled with. And obviously, we haven't played with that sort of two attacking-minded players in that position. But I also think it's a willingness and a buy-in from those players to know that how are we pressing, where the space is going to be, where's the intelligence of that, right? And Busio's an intelligent player. with that regard. So I do like. I was sad that he only got 45. I don't know if it was like planned or injury or something, but like that connectivity, you don't need it to be 10s in those spots, right? That can be two-way 8s that know that, okay, we're catching this wave of defense. We got to be able to drop a line deeper, and you got to do that sort of between a 6 and an 8 type of work defensively and sit in front of that back line.
Okay, the only reason I bring that up and to give some context for everybody is because I want us to right now talk about the game against Trinidad. Obviously, we need to score as many goals as possible because we know that we're going to go up against Jamaica, who's going to score a bunch against St. Kitts, and they should have scored a bunch more against Trinidad. We currently have, I think, 3 more goal difference than them, so we just have to match essentially, and we have a +3 in our favor. Whatever Jamaica does against St. Kitts. I don't think it's going to be that easy against Trini. I think that they're going to figure out ways to be difficult, like they always do every time we play them. But they're out of the tournament. Like us and Jamaica are going through, and
what was it?
I guess mathematically they're not out of it. They can beat us, but it's I don't.
They
see
won
them
3.
beating us.
They won 3-0, right, against St. Kitts.
They won 3-0 against St. Kitts. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And so I don't see them beating us, but I feel like they could hold us to a number. Now we're going to go into second. So ultimately, I want to talk about the starting lineup. Like, what do you want to see in our starting lineup against Trinidad, Heath Pearce? Merging the 2 lineups together, I assume, in some capacity, right?
I'm going same back 4. I like Brian Reynolds at right back. Even if Brian Reynolds didn't score, and in a game like that where it's really hard to judge, because I said it yesterday, like when you're a fullback in a game like that, it's a dream scenario because you don't have to play any defense. So you could just stay up and attack the whole time. And it's hard to have a bad game or not show up in that position because you're always facing the game in the right positions. But I would keep them there. And I also just think I don't need to see DeAndre Yedlin anymore. I just don't. Like he's been so incredible and so important for this national team for so long. I don't know why I need to see him in a Gold Cup or why he is on the margins better than a Brian Reynolds at this point, right? So just keep him there. Keep my back 4.
Yeah, he shouldn't be on the roster. I mean, we should be graduating from those guys. With all due respect to DeAndre,
I don't mind
his service. So many caps, 2 World Cups.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind having experience in the roster because you do know that you need that, and I've heard he's really good as within the locker room of the guys. So I think that's a really important factor of having him in there and him understanding his role and nurturing the next generation
but yes,
of guys, which is why we took 19 right backs to the World Cup because it was more of a mentorship trip for the right backs than it was for the rest of the players on the field. But I keep the same back line, Jimmy. I'm going to go again. Wait.
If Miles Robinson's healthy, would you consider rolling him out at this point to get 90 minutes or 45 or
no? Maybe I'm talking a final 30 for him, depending on the circumstances.
Okay.
You know what you're going to get from him, but if you can get yourself 4 more days, why not take those extra?
Yeah,
it's kind of like get back to full health, and then 1 more week is sort of always the magic sauce of like, do you feel great? Okay, 1 more week, and we can work you into that.
I agree with you on the back 4. I
want to go James. I want to see James Sands in there again. He looked comfortable on the ball. It looked a little bit more like classic James Sands. Obviously, again, take it all into account that we weren't under pressure at all. He was facing the game, mostly got the ball in good spots. I thought Aiden Morris was solid when he came in late in the game, especially more so as an 8. You know, a little bit more in the attack of being able to service the ball. Everybody was an 8 in that game, to be honest with you, because, again, the circumstances. But let's go James Sands. I'm going to go with Mihailovic, and I want to see Jesus Ferreira for the first half in that mix. Within that mix, and it's hard because Busio didn't play himself out, by the way. It's just I want to see that because I want to see Vasquez. If that doesn't work, take out Vasquez at halftime, move Ferreira back up top, and put in Busio into the midfield. It's sort of my thinking. Not halftime, but say, maybe halftime. I don't know.
Okay, so you go with Ferreira, Mihailovic, and Sands. I'm on board with that. Unfortunate for Busio, but I think that there's a huge pocket of space. The Jamaica-Trinidad game, for the large swaths of the game that I saw, there's a lot of gaps between the back line and midfield that I think that Ferreira and Busio obviously could take advantage of it too. But to have Ferreira and Mihailovic kind of finding those areas with Vasquez ahead of them gets me pretty excited. And I wonder how that would impact also the wingers, because Zendejas and Cal didn't come off looking too great against St. Kitts. And so would you roll with those 2 guys again?
I would give them both another run against Trinidad. I thought they were both
45 minimum.
Yeah, because look, what's going to happen is you're going to get into the knockout rounds, and you need to have a clear picture if you're BJ Callahan of who can I rely upon to deliver for me, right? I know what I'm going to get from Christian Roldan. I know what I'm going to get from Jordan Morris if I put them into those 2 wide positions. I know it's going to be solid. I thought Roldan brought a really good energy when he came on the field. I know what Jordan Moores is going to bring me because he's got 52 caps for the national team. Like, I know those things. And so I'm using the group stages to basically test these players to prove that you're ready for that next level. I thought those are the two players that I struggled with the most. But I also know that I'm going to give them another game because they weren't bad. They just weren't good. And in a game against St. Kitts and Nevis, you should be good. And so give them that run. If you got to take them out and put in those two guys, and then for the rest of the tournament, if they don't prove to you in this game against Trinidad to light the game up in the way that we've seen their potential to be, that's where I'm drawing the line there, is like, hey, I'm going to go with the guys that I know I can trust when I get to the knockout rounds, because you two haven't proven to me that I can go to you guys in these types of moments, and I make that change.
I agree with you on that. And I think that this would be somewhat of a nice touch from BJ to go with those guys again, to give them that encouragement and confidence that, hey, we still trust you. Because you and I have been in those positions before where you get your shot, you don't take your shot, and then you might not get another chance for a year. It could be 18 months, could be 6 months. I mean, there's all these different variables. And I know it's the national team, right? You got to put up or shut up. But there is something in a tournament format where you have the luxury, especially in this competition, to play. I guess I walked myself into saying lesser opponents, but opponents that don't maybe have the quality that you have. And so I think there would be something to be said like, hey, I'm going to give you 45 minutes. That could turn into 60 if I see something good in the first half. But there's something about knowing that a coach has your back that gives you that little extra spark. You want to prove something to him and validate why he's choosing you. So I like that shout a lot. Well, you didn't tell me goalkeeper, though. Do you bring in Slanina at this point?
No. I mean,
John Johnson, Turner, what are you going with?
You had a chance to go with Slanina. I think there is a pecking order that's natural, right? Like if you're Sean Johnson, you're like, dude, this is my 5th or 6th Gold Cup, and like I've been grinding for over a decade.
I've only had one cap.
Like, yeah, I have one. I think he's got like less than 10 caps in total. Jimmy, I think we may have caught a little feedback there. I don't know if you're something's touching something there or whatever, but maybe it's on my end. But yeah, like I'm gonna go with probably Sean Johnson again in this one. Give Turner. No, actually, I'm going back to Turner. You got to go with Turner because you need the goals, you need the points, you need the performance. So go with the guy that you brought in, who's been your number one.
All right, we're gonna take our first break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we'll look at the rest of the Gold Cup, and of course, we got some big transfers to discuss. So don't go anywhere.
Absolutely magisterial here. Artilharia do Campeonato Brasileiro. Colpisce ancora. Golazo.
Welcome back, everybody, to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce and not Charlie Davies. And we just want to remind everybody that the Golazo Network's flagship show, Morning Footy, is now a podcast. That's right. Susanna Collins, Charlie Davies, yes, that Chuck Wagon, Nico Cantor, Alexis Guerreros, Jenny Chu, and a ton of guests, including myself every once in a while. Bring you the latest news, analysis, and exclusive interviews every weekday morning. So get your morning started off on the right foot with Morning Footy, a soccer culture-driven morning show for fans of all stripes. And you can download and follow on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you find your podcasts. Now, you know what I like about Morning Footy, Heath?
What's that?
Is that they do a lot of fun segments that allow you to get to know players or coaches, sporting directors, or whatever it may be, in a really fun way.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because something just happened recently with the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals, the baseball team, and Matt Turner, who went out and took batting practice. And I feel like that's a total Morning Footy segment. But this one was in line with U.S. Soccer. Now, Matt Turner went out there, Heath, and was doing batting practice, and like
he went
hitting
yard.
home runs.
He went yard multiple times. He
went yard multiple times. I do want to state for the record that I did batting practice with the Kansas City Royals back in the day, and their manager came out and was throwing knuckleballs, and I sat on one and I hit the foul pole. I guess that counts as a home run, but it wasn't like, run the bases around, start flexing on everybody. Yeah. I mean, I hit like the base of the foul pole, so I guess it counts as the home run, but they weren't like Matt Turner's. And so,
by the way, Jimmy, I just associate your backdrop with whatever you're talking about. Now you're like a major White Sox fan in my book. Like we were talking a little bit national team. I was like, okay, a little Juve there, or like
Juve action for Team Weah.
Old school basketball referee. If we're talking about any sort of references there. But
I'm here at a Foot Locker, Heath. I'm here in Athens, Greece, at a Foot Locker. But Yeah, Matt Turner's home runs. I don't know. I think we have some video of it. Producer Alex can throw it up for everybody that's on the YouTube. But the guy was hitting absolute bombs. And so my question for you and for everybody that's listening, and if you're or watching, please let us know which former U.S. men's national team player do you think would be able to hit bombs like Matt Turner? I do think we picked the right player, Heath, to represent us because
also,
the hand-eye
why is he left-handed? Why is he left-handed?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. But the hand-eye coordination of a goalkeeper obviously is going to be a little bit better than a field player. But for me, what jumps out, I think Jay DeMerit would probably be pretty good. Multiple sports.
Yeah.
Carlos Bocanegra, Gucci Onyewu, a whole bunch of guys that I think would be. Clint Dempsey, I think would probably be pretty awesome.
Well, if you can get Morning Footy to just do a cross-sport competition, Jimmy, I'm definitely going to finish near the top. We can go basketball. We can go some American football drills. We can go baseball. We can go.
Damn, dude! I didn't realize
volleyball. Oh yeah, dude! I'm going
5 minutes for the flex.
Oh, for the flex. You go back and look at some of this stuff, man. Ooh, wee boy! I got some great highlight reels of all kinds of different sports. You know what I mean? So I'm putting myself near the top, Jimmy.
Okay.
And I also, by the way, I'm also making this proclamation because of the uniqueness of soccer. I would say that your best multi-sport players are going to be the soccer players because 99% of the other athletes say they played soccer and they probably did at some point. But being able to actually go and do soccer is so nuanced that I think we would over-index in other sports, and those other athletes would probably drop a lot of points in the category of soccer to where I think we went out in the end. Like
no, that's fair.
If we put our best multi-sport guys from soccer, and soccer was a category against other top athletes from other sports, we're winning that.
Wait, didn't they have something? We had a soccer player back in the 70s, early 80s, Kyle Rote Jr. Was that who it was? And
yeah.
He would do those competitions against all the other athletes, and he'd always win.
Yeah,
I got to get that confirmed. We'll have producer Alex looking that up for us, but I'm pretty sure.
Sounds like a NASCAR driver, Jimmy.
It does sound like that. I don't know if I got his name right. Now I feel bad if I got that wrong. But which players from the current U.S. men's national team player pool do you think would be a good two-way athlete? We see Pulisic is good at chess. That's from Matt. I kind of think that Brendan Aronson would be amazing at hockey. Just like chasing down the puck,
field
crazy.
Hockey. He's like a field.
Well,
like anything that's on a soccer field type of thing.
Hair,
I think.
I don't know.
Anything that's just like running and on a soccer field type of thing. You know, Brendan Aronson looks like a lacrosse kid. You know, probably field hockey as well. But I would say it's always goalkeepers. Like Tim Howard and I used to argue about this all the time about like who was better at all these things. We used to do I've shared it before, but we used to do finish training with the national team. And we do basketball tip-offs to see who had a more explosive jump to win a tip-off. Just like a completely useless type of game. And we would just, go after these things to be like, who has a higher vertical jump? Who can get off the ground quicker? But I definitely think the goalkeepers are, just because the nature of it. Generally, a lot of them came into soccer later or chose soccer later because they had all these other sports going on. And then they became like, oh, yeah, you're really good at goalkeeping. This could be something for you. And they're like, nah, but like it's not as fun as shooting threes, And they're like, yeah, but you're not 6'9", so this is probably your best bet. So I would say the goalkeepers, center backs. I'm trying to think about who else there would be.
Yes, give some center backs some love, by the way.
Yeah, center backs, I think for sure. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't think I'm going midfielder. Like I know that like there's guys now that like I know Landon's a really good tennis player. I know that like John Thorrington's a really good tennis player, like guys that I know that are here locally or have played with the different tennis pieces here.
Sure.
But if we're talking about like multiple sports that require a number of different like skill sets, I don't know, man. I got to go with center backs and goalkeepers, or defenders and goalkeepers. I'll call it that, because I'm not taking myself out of any category. I will go to St. Louis right now and slug one, ding one, way out of there where everybody turns their head and just nods like they were with Matt Turner. By the way, it's one of those things that look like a little CGI, little editing tricks where it's like ball gets hit and then they see it over the fence. But those guys, when you see the players, they're like, oh my gosh, dude, this guy can actually hit.
Can I say that Busio looks like he'd be like a top skateboarder? I don't know why I feel that way about him.
Yeah.
He'd just be a sick skateboarder. Or like I could see Timo Weah being sick at ping pong. Like I want them to have these weird arbitrary sports that I don't know. I think a lot of our guys would kick ass. And then obviously we have Ocho Cinco who is a friend of ours, and the nuance of the game, to your point, like Chad Ocho Cinco Johnson, world-class athlete. But when it comes to playing the game, to what you said before, very difficult to like translate some of that, of his ability, his world-class ability, into being successful at this particular sport. So whereas I think we're sitting here saying that because of the base athleticism that we have that's required to play at a high level of this sport, that lends itself to being more successful at all the other sports.
Cade Cowell would have been at least a high D1 American football player as a running back or even a linebacker. That's his type of build. And he was actually a phenomenal, like, comes from my area, phenomenal athlete as a sprinter too. He's a sub 1100 meter, maybe a mid 10s 100-meter sprinter. So he's got that sort of build too, that, like, you know, could run through brick walls type of build. I'm happy he's playing the game. But yeah, I think everybody you could go through, and we should do it sometime, Jimmy, you could go through everyone and give them a second sport that I think you'd naturally fit them into based on their attributes. But then there's the ones that are like the all around, you know, who's our Bo Jackson, you know, who's our like multi-sport athlete, the kind of guys that Eddie Johnson was one that I've told the story before, were like unbelievable. We used to run routes when we were in residency together and do football stuff. I watched him go into the gym without ever working out and pump 225 pounds as a 15-year-old on the bench press. Like, you know, when everybody was like, dude, look at this guy, is yoked over there. And Eddie was like, nah, no worries. And started just repping out 225s when we were all like, you know, if you could put 245s on the bars, you were killing it back then. And he was putting double 45s and just smashing it. So he was one that, like,
yeah, EJ's a great shout.
Not just athleticism, explosive, like all the attributes that he had, but just all the other things that came with that development. He could have literally done any sport as well and been close to a pro, if not a pro.
Okay, I just want to circle back to Kyle Rote Jr. This guy was an absolute beast. Okay, he earned 5 caps of the U.S. between 73 and 75. He led the NASL in scoring in 1973. He's a member of the National Soccer Hall of Fame, and he won this show called Superstars. It's made for television competition where you go up against all the other best athletes. And I think he's the only person that's won it 3 times. No, there's another guy that's won it more than that. But we're talking Herschel Walker was in there, Willie Galt for all you old schoolers out there. And this dude won it, and he was setting the tone. I mean, he was like the first U.S. soccer superstar, you know, outside of that 1950 team. But you know, that people knew. He's like a household name because Superstars was such a big deal. I guess it features the 10 top athletes from 10 different sports competing in events that were not their own. And he crushed it, dude. So shout out to Kyle Rote Jr., who won the show 3 times. That's insane. What an absolute animal. So that kind of just speaks to what we're trying to say, is that the skill set for soccer players definitely translates.
Well, Jimmy, there's a new documentary on the American Gladiators on Netflix that just came out. And I'm just curious, you know, I'm thinking more Jay DeMerit types would be our best American Gladiators to win against the American Gladiators. That's a whole nother conversation of sport. But man, thinking through that lens of who would have done the best in that competition, I'm not really sure who it would be, but it'd be pretty funny. I'd also love to see our entire national team dressed in the full-on spandex outfit for the next World Cup, you know?
There is something. I hope that some of that I hope Superstars comes back in some capacity, because I think it would be cool for one of our top athletes to compete against some of the other guys, if only to continue to gain respect with the casual fans in the sport. All right, let's talk a little bit more Gold Cup. Let's recap what's been happening. We'll talk Canada's 2-2 draw with Guadeloupe here in a second, but some big fixtures coming up. Today, Qatar takes on Honduras. Both of those teams lost, so a big one for them. Haiti and Mexico face off. They both won, so it'll be interesting to see how Mexico comes off of that 4-0 win, and if they can turn into something special against the Haitian team that's always dangerous. And you have Martinique, who will be taking on Panama tomorrow. El Salvador will be taking on Costa Rica. And then on Saturday, you got Cuba taking on Guadeloupe, and Guatemala taking on Canada. I want to talk about Canada a little bit. I saw the results. I saw most of the highlights. I tried to catch as much of the game as I possibly could. And they were in charge. I mean, they basically blew the lead at the end on an own goal off of a set piece, and they just needed to sharpen up there. But I thought Guadeloupe was excellent. They created a ton of chances. I think the draw was a fair result, Heath.
Yeah.
But John Herdman came out, and as John Herdman does, he's got a lot to say, so you got to respect that. But This is what he said after the game. People will just hear a name like Guadeloupe, but don't realize that it's all French nationals that play in the French league or the Belgian league. It's a different kettle of fish. Valuation-wise, Guadeloupe was almost equal in value to Canada on the pitch tonight. That's fact. The fact is, the only top 5 league player in Europe played on Guadeloupe's team tonight. And so, yeah, I mean, he's not wrong, but I think that it's funny that they're playing in Toronto. It sounds like a lot of excuses there. Hey, by the way, did you know? Also, a total of 5 players made their debut for the Canadian men's national team. 3 as starters and 2 coming off the bench. And I think Ali Ahmed was probably the best of the group. Just a ton of personality on the ball, and I'm excited to see. I could see him breaking into the first team, so keep your eye on him in particular. But this is four goals that Canada's given up in their last 2 games. Not a good look for John Herdman. They definitely pride themselves on being good defensively. You think they get through their group, win their group, no problem here? What's your take?
I think they get through their group. I'm not sure if they win their group. That's all going to be on, I think, Guadeloupe and also what Guatemala end up doing within all that. We know that there is some unpredictability in Guatemala, and they do have some quality that they can make you suffer if they get into a good rhythm. So I think it does sound like excuses. I don't deny the fact, but like you also don't get to be in a 2-1 lead and then like not close it out and then call it like, oh yeah, like let's not forget these types of like facts, right? Like this is the Canada who were the best in CONCACAF, the kings of CONCACAF, the like, you know, the dominant ones, the new wave of like, you know, whatever it is. And they've still got a lot of players. Like John Herdman decided to rotate that squad. He decided to put out a bunch of new cap players. Don't blame him for that. He took that. That was a choice that he made. But perhaps he underestimated them as well in terms of like not rolling out his best 11 to go and get a result in that one. So that's my take, but I don't blame him for changing players because I love going into tournaments and using new players to see who your next gen of players are going to be.
We wanted a little bit more of that, I think, with our roster, and I think I'm speaking for everybody in some capacity. What's interesting, though, is if we end up getting runner-up in our group, we're going to play the winner of Group D. So we could end up playing Canada in the quarterfinals, which is pretty wild. But Guatemala currently on 3 points in Group D, Guadeloupe on 1, Canada on 1, Cuba on 0. Cuba has lost a couple players already. 4 players. Yeah. 4 have defected. Yeah. Only one of those 4 actually played. Started for Cuba in their game against Guatemala, 1-0 loss, and the other 3 did not. But they are now with 4 less players. So we'll see how that impacts them. I mean, every Gold Cup, there's a few. When I played, I remember 2005, my first Gold Cup, Ozzy Alonso was on the Cuban team, and he ended up defecting. And obviously, he turned that into a wildly successful career. And what a player Ozzy Alonso is. But, yeah, I mean, based on all the other games that I mentioned, Heath, is there anything that stands out for you that you're looking forward to seeing here for match day 2 in the other groups?
No, it is to me. It is about, you know, the teams that I'm thinking of is Guadeloupe and it is Jamaica in terms of, you know, these 2 teams could be the ones. We saw that, who was it, Curacao in the last Gold Cup in terms of their progress, and they've really struggled to have even get anywhere close to that type of form since then as a national team. And so, you know, for Guadeloupe, I think we're seeing a number of players and a number of national teams now going this route, again, recognizing that we're talking about an expanded World Cup. Can we do it? You know, and it's going to start here in the Gold Cup of like starting to get those rhythm and those reps. Like Jamaica are going to make the next World Cup, like unless there's some sort of wild type of qualifying.
Agreed.
You know, having said that, like Jamaican players are going to still have to go to Costa Rica, Panama, Guatemala, you know, these Honduras and get results. And that is an extreme challenge. It's not that easy. We have a better team than Jamaica in terms of our A team. And we will forever struggle in very difficult environments like that. So I don't want to say it's that easy, but net, if they can learn to become really good at home, I think we're going to see Jamaica in the next World Cup. But yeah, Guadeloupe are interesting.
I agree with you 100% of that. Guadeloupe is going to be playing against Cuba. As we mentioned, they're down a few players. I think Guadeloupe is going to have the quality to get past Cuba. That would put them on 4 points. And if we end up getting second, we could face them in the quarterfinals. And that just makes our road a little bit more difficult. But honestly, that's what I want. I want us to play against the best teams that we possibly can, against the best players. That's how we're going to learn as much about this player pool and who's on this roster as possible. All right, we're going to take our second and last break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back with transfer news to discuss, including the room I'm sitting. I've got a Juventus room. For people who can't see it, I've got black and white behind me. And it was just for Timo Weah because he made his official transfer to the Italian Giants in Turin. Juventus. We'll talk about that and much more. Don't go anywhere.
Someone hunted a hunter. This is the work of a serial killer. Pickett thinks he can do a cop's job.
Drop your weapon. Stand down.
No one trusts a lone man in the wild.
Joe Pickett Season 2 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Use promo code Pickett for 1 month free trial. Credit card required. Terms apply.
Welcome back to A Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce and not Charlie Davies. We're excited to hang out with the Trust Fund, the trustees on board of this wonderful show. We love our community, so thank you so much for your support. No matter where you consume it, whether it's on the YouTubes or on your favorite podcast platform, whatever it may be. But keep those likes and subscribes and five-star ratings coming. I almost said 4, but don't do 4s, 5s only. And again, we're excited to have you guys with us. Listen, U.S. men's national team, big summer. We talked about it leading up to the summer. We're here in the summer, and now things are happening, Heath. And we've got a big one. Timo Weah is going to Juventus. And that, I think, signals the end of Juan Cuadrado, John Square. 35-year-old, looks like he's going to be letting go. He's going to be a free transfer. They're saying maybe Lazio, maybe other teams in Serie A for the 35-year-old. I could see him going to Saudi Arabia because they're seeming to get everybody these days. He'll probably make a nice payday there at the latter stages of his career. But let's talk about Timo Weah. He's 23 years old, and it seems like under Maxi Allegri, they're seeing him in that Juan Cuadrado role, which is why I bring up Mr. John Square and how he got forward, how he joined the attack. And obviously with his experience playing with Lille, where he was being asked to play left back and right back and a right wing back and right wing.
Wasn't it?
And when we see him with the U.S., like, the guy is capable, and it's very exciting. I think this is a tremendous move for his career. I'm not the biggest Maxi Allegri fan. I think sometimes he's a little conservative with his tactics, but I don't know if that's going to impact Timo Weah. If it was somewhere else maybe in the middle of the field with Weston McKennie, we'll see what his future lies with the old lady. But with Timo Weah, I think I'm feeling good things, and I like this move. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Chuck that said he had talked to Timo at the Nations League, and he had mentioned, like, wanting to be he was going to move on from Lille and wanting to be a wing back. And I remember him saying that. And I was thinking, like, well, that's a bit specific because that is a system-based position.
Yeah,
where, like, if you're not in that system, you're not playing because that is a specialty type of skill. And we've seen a lot of players be really good at it. Not to say you couldn't be a winger or a fullback in the end, but that kind of higher starting position with 3 players in between, that's a Juventus, likely a Juventus, like you said. Juan Cuadrado was really good at that as he went from a winger to more of a wing back later on in his career. I think that could be a really great position for him. It's just that you need a coach that's going to stick to that type of system. But again, that starting position and his ability to be on 2 sides of the ball and be, additive going forward or leading going forward, but also being a defensive presence, I think it could be great. And when you think about that through the lens, obviously he's probably speaking about the opportunity at hand and knew about that versus, like, just being like, I'm a wing back only now. But yeah, I think it could be a great one for him because perhaps that is where he sees his future. And if he sees his future there and the club is going to play in that type of system, that could be a win-win versus it being like, a winger in a system where maybe you're playing a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 or different sets of systems where maybe they go one of 3 winger options, depending on, like, are you trying to have your wingers high and wide, or are you trying to have inverted wingers because you have a left footer that's going to come inside on the right side? This could be his position because it is an out and out right-footed position. So great. I like it if it happens.
Now, producer Alex is yelling at us in the chat saying it's not official yet. Listen, come on, dude. It's official. He was there. We have video of him. Maybe he's got to pass a medical or whatever. But come on, producer, I'll get off my back, dude.
By the way, I tweeted this yesterday, saying it was great to see that, Juventus, as you see here, going the extra step to make sure that they had an American-made car and that it's a Jeep, pick him up to make him feel at home. And then all the people who just don't get the irony of it were like, it's a club sponsor, dude. They pick up everybody in that. I'm like, no, I get it. I get it, guys. Like, I didn't actually think they were like, hey, what's something we can do to make the American feel more at home? Like, we're thinking, like, taking the extra step. Oh, let's get an American car to pick him up. Like, no, I'm well aware how sponsorships work, and that Jeep definitely paid a lot of money to make sure that all player pickups are getting picked up in their car because, hey, marketing.
Listen, I don't believe you. I think you're just now filling in that gap right now.
I don't own a Jeep. So I'm not endorsing them in any way, shape, or form.
Well, let's keep it in Italy and Juve in particular. Weston McKennie is being linked to Roma. And I found that one to be a little interesting. Obviously, Roma is coached by Jose Mourinho, who reportedly just turned down $30 million a year to coach in Saudi Arabia, to stay with Roma, to see out the project or his vision for the club.
Crazy.
And apparently that might include Weston McKennie. Let's leave Roma out. Let's talk just about being coached by Jose Mourinho and how impactful that could potentially be for Weston McKennie. Do you like that move? It doesn't seem like he's going to fit with Rabiot, obviously staying now at Juve and signing another year deal with Juve. It just feels like that's another sign that maybe Weston McKennie is going to be surplus goods. Obviously, they loaned him out to Leeds, so they're already feeling that way. But do you like the move to potentially play for Jose Mourinho for Weston?
I think Weston will learn a lot as a professional from Jose Mourinho in terms of the demands and the expectations. And I think he actually thrives in an environment where there's a lot of structure for him and going through all that. If you go back to the first year at Juventus, like people were like, nah, this guy coming from Schalke, he's not a Juventus type of, that is funny. Jimmy's Roma. What a throwback that is, dude. That is classic. You've had fans for over a decade.
I got to do
now.
it. I feel like I got to do it. I'm wearing a black shirt in front of a black and white wall, so it feels kind of weird to give it that Roma. But I'll do it. I'm not afraid to do it.
I love that, dude. What a classic throwback that is. But again, for Weston, I think that's a great thing for him because the expectations of the club are always high, and they don't always achieve those expectations. That it's a good situation for him to be in where it is a significant amount of pressure. He's been under pressure. Don't get me wrong. But when he came into Juventus, I think people were really he's not quite a Juventus quality player. And he ended up starting like 70% of the games that year and playing really well in his breakout season for Juventus. So I think a new environment where he's challenged and having to be kind of locked in and tuned in every day of the week, especially with the Jose Mourinho being the watchful eye, I think could turn him. We could see a ceiling actually raise a little bit from what I think it currently is and how I'm seeing Weston McKennie as a player.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, you can always get better, right? Be a student of the game. And I think your tactical acumen grows as you get more reps and you see more plays and you get more comfortable with that. I think there's a system there under Jose Mourinho that he could learn from. And I think just add to his, I always, when I coach kids, I say, we want to put more tools in your tool belt. And we want to make the game easier for you and more comfortable. And the more tools you have, the easier that's going to be. So I think playing for a Jose Mourinho, getting away from Maxi Allegri, getting away from the situation of Leeds, and now coming into a situation that's well coached, there's a vision, there's an idea, there's an identity. I saw Jacob in the chat saying that he thinks that Weston is a prototypical Jose player. I don't know if there's some emotional. They're both very emotional and love the game and are passionate. So I could see them definitely connecting there. But I'm curious in if he does come, how he's utilized and what the expectations and the asks are of him from Jose. So that would be a lot of fun. And I hope it goes down. Last time I think we had an American at Roma was Michael Bradley. So it would be nice to have a little, Brian Reynolds, I guess, was there and he had a cup of coffee before he got shipped out. But I think in a meaningful way, Weston McKennie would play. All right, let's keep it in Italy. Let's talk a little AC Milan because they're floating around two players. They got Christian Pulisic on their radar. They got Yunus Musa on their radar. Apparently, Valencia is willing to allow Yunus to leave for $20 million, which I think is an absolute steal. And then you have Christian Pulisic, who was he like 73 million pounds or $73 million to Chelsea, and now they're valuing him at like 25 to 30. Mm-hmm. Milan trying to push for a little less. Chelsea obviously trying to push for a little bit more. Apparently, Christian said he would get less per year. He would take less salary just to try to get this move facilitated and moved. And I guess the big question overall for everybody listening is, do you think Christian would be a good fit for Serie A and for AC Milan in particular? For him to play on the opposite side of Rafael Leao sounds absolutely awesome. And I think playing for Stefano Pioli in particular and just that group of players, I think would be a lot of fun. With Yunus Musa, it's interesting. I know that Tonali left to go to Newcastle, but you got Ruben Loftus-Cheek that comes in. And for everybody that used to watch some of my old YouTube stuff, Ruben Loftus butt cheek is what I used to call him for my career mode back in the day.
Jimmy's just an old YouTube mode today.
It's all YouTube, guys.
All coming out good.
YouTubers, kick TV years out there. But it's just interesting. And I think if you could get both of those Americans for $45 million, I think that's a steal of a deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be fantastic. Again, I think Pulisic is good at coming back deeper in the field and springing out on the counterattack and have a little more freedom to that. For me, a player of his quality and value, though, I think still needs to get into that double digits, probably both categories at the end of the day over a full season. And I think in a club like that, he could be able to be really, really impactful and relied upon. Yunus Musa, I think, just has so much upside that at 20 million, for a team that I don't think valued him toward later on in the season, I think it's a lot, but I think it's worth it.
I don't know. That's a steal, dude. He's a kid still, he's got a World Cup under his belt. He continues to get better and better. I'm looking at Milan's formation last year. They played a 4-2-3-1 in 29 of their Serie A matches. You have Benacer in the middle of midfield. You had Tonali and Brahim Diaz were their midfield three. So when I think about Musa, you got Loftus-Cheek coming in. I could see Benacer and Loftus-Cheek on either side. Brahim Diaz, I think he went back to Real Madrid, so I guess there's some room. You could put Christian in the middle too if you wanted. You got Junior Messias, Rafael Leao. You got some guys that are pretty good.
I like it.
But I like the move too, and I'm curious to see. I bet. Well, I'm hoping both Americans make a move, or both of those guys. But I could see it happening. And apparently, Pulisic has agreed to terms for his salary, but we'll see. So it should be. This is crazy. It's gonna be a great summer, and I'm excited for a lot of our players. All right, let's keep it moving though, because I think that we need to talk about Ricardo Pepi, your guy. The hype train is real. He is going to PSV. 11 million. They ended up doing it. He signed a 5-year deal until 2028. PSV finished second in the Eredivisie last season. Are you excited for this one, Heath Pearce?
Oh yeah, you want me to make?
You go.
Okay. Check this out.
Go for it. I want it. Give me the best you got.
Greg Berhalter cuts Ricardo Pepi from the World Cup team. Right.
Okay.
Post World Cup, Ernie Stewart says, "You know what? You left my guy off. I'm going to go on a mission to Europe.
I love this.
Leave and go get a job where I can nurture this boy. This boy has potential, and it's on me now to make sure that that potential is realized. So I'm going to go to Europe, and I'm going to go to PSV Eindhoven. I'm going to go with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Okay, Ruud, you don't want to be part of this whole Ricardo Pepi train. You're not on the train. You don't want a ticket. You're out. I'm going to have somebody else come in, and I'm going to coach, and I'm going to manage Ricardo Pepi to a big sale and a big valuation that he's competing with Florin Balogun for a starting spot, or they're playing a double striker system come 2026. I love it, Jimmy. I love it. I'm not saying it's true, but in this QSMNT era of like the conspiracy theorist, I'm gonna create that controversy and say that Ernie Stewart took it on his back to make sure that Ricardo Pepi doesn't go to an Augsburg again.
No, I love it. I think it's going to be a great move for him, and I'm excited to see him be surrounded by guys that are going to give him more opportunities to showcase why he's a special player. All right, let's Brendan Aronson, apparently linked to Fulham. We'll keep everybody posted on that. Serginho Dest being linked to a few clubs, including the Bundesliga one, Union Berlin. And apparently he's been linked with West Ham and Crystal Palace, potentially Besiktas as well. I'm sure that'll be last on his list if he can stay in the top 5 league in Europe. We do need to talk about, Zach Steffen apparently being linked to Leicester City, which is interesting. Matt Turner, no idea what's happening there, but we got Taylor Booth being linked to Manchester United. So that, and Celta Vigo apparently. Anthony Robinson being linked to a whole bunch of teams, City, Newcastle, Marseille, and Milan, along with, I guess Fulham's asking for 35 million. So I'd be kind of curious to see there. But let's talk about Florin Balogun, because apparently Arsenal's telling him to find a new club. And he, I think, has told them as well, I want to find a new club if I'm not going to play.
They won 40 plus million. That's a lot, man.
That's a lot. That's a lot for a player they didn't necessarily believe in or, went to send out there. But he's got a whole bunch of teams that are interested. Crystal Palace is now showing a lot of interest. You got Inter Milan, not Inter Miami there. Marseille, Monaco, RB Leipzig. But it looks like Marseille might be the one that's kind of hot and heavy at the moment. Where would you like to see him? And everybody else listening and watching, let us know.
I wouldn't mind him staying at a big club in France for now. I think staying outside of the Premier League, I think, is really important. It's hard, right? Because when you look at who he was competing with, for example, for England national team, you have what's his name that scored 17 goals last year in the Premier League?
Harry Kane?
Not Harry Kane, but under him in the depth chart.
Rashford.
No, not Rashford. Go a click deeper, like the third striker for England.
Oh, Ivan Toney.
Ivan Toney, yeah.
Isn't he suspended? But okay, doesn't
yeah,
matter.
yeah. But my point is that Ivan Toney still found a lot of success not playing for one of the biggest clubs in England. But that is a really few and far. That's a really hard challenge, right? That we've seen with any guys. And so I'm sure the money and the temptation and the ability to buy him is probably highest in the Premier League. But I'd love to see him just stay away from the Premier League. And he's obviously proven that he can do it in France. You put better players around him, and I like where that could end up for him as well. So yeah,
I guess the way I would look at it is, does he want this to be his, not say final step? Does this next move, is it another stepping stone to something bigger, or is he trying to solve that problem and get to the biggest right away? And I wonder how he's being, mentored in this particular situation. I feel like he needs that one more step before he, and I think all the big clubs are monitoring it too. Okay, he did it with Reims, but can he do it with Marseille? Can he do it with Monaco? Can he do it somewhere else? And then I think that will attract some of the bigger clubs. But it's interesting times for Balogun. I'm obviously thrilled that he's part of the U.S. men's national team. And so definitely all eyes are on him and what he does this summer. All right, let's talk about something the opposite.
Real quick, before we get past that, I do want to point out for people, we got a little static going on again. But I do want to point out for people that Peter Bosch is the new coach instead of Ruud van Nistelrooy. There was a few like him under Ruud van Nistelrooy. They had a big falling out, aka a falling out with our boy, blanking on his name now. But Ernie Stewart, yeah. But Peter Bosch coached the Ajax team that lost in the Europa League final. And when you think about players and development of players, like just real quick, so you understand the trajectory of a lot of these guys that were in that team that year: Davinson Sanchez, David Neres, Davy Klaassen, Amin Younes, Heiko Westerman, Lasse Schöne, Frankie de Jong, Hakim Ziyech, Andre Onana, Kasper Dolberg, Donny van de Beek, Abdelhak Nouri, Matthias de Ligt. Like, these were all players that were under Justin Kluivert, Jasper Cillessen. So when you think about somebody who's worked with a lot of talent, whether young or old, like that is a dream scenario for Ricardo Pepi to go into at the club. So I just wanted to point that out just to like further endorse that movement.
Okay. No. And I'm
anyways, we can move on from that, Jimmy. I'll never move on, but we can move on. Yeah.
No, I know, because you're the number one fan of Ricardo Pepi. Let's do the opposite though, because FC Cincinnati blocked a transfer for Brandon Vasquez to go to Borussia Mönchengladbach, reportedly for $8 million. And I think and it's just not straightforward when you make an MLS transfer, right? It's not like the $8 million is going to go to FC Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like they can go out, and they already have 3 other DPs. Yeah. They can't go out and sign another one, and it gets a little complicated for them. Now, Brandon went on Morning Footy, the show that we love here on the Golasso Network, and actually he went on, and Brandon Vasquez, and he talked about wanting to play in Europe. Let's roll that clip right now if you've got it, producer Alex.
I've pictured myself going to Europe. I've strived to go to Europe, making that jump over there. That's still my goal today. And obviously I want to work towards making that 2026 World Cup roster here on U.S. soil. That would be an incredible way to make a debut at the World Cup. And that's on an international level. But on club level, yeah, definitely try to go to Europe.
No, it sounds like a pretty good answer to me. I understand why you'd have that thirst to want to get over there, especially if you're getting interest and people are calling and inquiring about you, especially a club, Mönchengladbach with a rich history and playing in the Bundesliga would be awesome for him and for him to further his career. But I can understand why FC Cincinnati doesn't want to let him go, because it gets a little complicated for them, especially if they're trying to win a trophy, if they're trying to tell their fans, hey, this matters to us. We want to win all the competitions that we're in. We're obviously in the Open Cup semifinals. We have Leagues Cup coming up. We're top of the table in MLS of all the teams that are participating. We don't want to mess that up right now. And when there's still a really good opportunity for Brandon to probably make the move in January.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure everybody knows that $8 million that they would get for him doesn't necessarily go right to them. So they can't reinvest that in the same type of way that would be traditional elsewhere.
Yeah. But I would still say, pay me then. You know, you can move me in January.
Right. Well, he just signed a new deal, right?
Between now and, did he sign a new deal just recently?
I think he signed a deal last year. Yeah.
Okay. But then, for me, it's just like, okay, we can work this out, but until that happens, let's up my deal. Like, let's see what I'm trying to see what his payroll is for this year. But, Like I would still say, I trust you, so you trust me. Give me the money now, and then you can recoup that at the end of the year if that's what the plan is. Like there is a healthy tension that's hard for a player to overlook bigger opportunities, whether financially or otherwise. That I think there's a meet in the middle type of thing. Now, whether they have the ability to do that, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I think he'll get his chance. You've just got it. That's you and I both know, Jimmy. I can look at everybody within Cincinnati's coaching staff and go, oh yeah, they know what's best for him, and they're going to do right by him. But you and I both know that we've also encountered people that we trust a lot, and you're putting a lot in other people's hands, that you do have to have that relationship and that trust to work through that to make sure that all parties can benefit.
No, I remember when I had a chance to go to Hanover with Steve Cherundolo in the Bundesliga, and it fell through at the last minute, and that sucked. And I was a little deflated for a little while. So I'm wondering how this impacts Brandon Vasquez. And I know that you have plenty of experiences as well that we can get into another time because we're calling it the end of the show. Our big final thought, though, is for one of our fans. His name is Judah Kehoe. He's from Madison, Wisconsin.
Awesome.
And he loves the show so much, he made a piano rendition of our little outgoing music that we have, and that's how we're going to end the show. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie, Heath, and myself, we're going to shout out one more time to Judah Kehoe. We appreciate you because this piano rendition is absolutely awesome. And we'll see you guys soon. Enjoy the Trinidad game. We'll see you afterwards. Later.